Alright, hey guys, this is going to be my first YouTube video. A part of not so much a series, but many things that I find interesting within wrestling today, past, or present, or possibly future. So, one of the great takeaways from a horrible year of 2020, especially a horrible year for wrestling in 2020, is the Hurt Business. The Hurt Business started, I want to say, it was early this year, most likely only pertaining to mainly Bobby Lashley and MVP. As MVP's return, he had big plans early this year. He was trying to convince different people to join him, such as Edge, and I forget who else. I would have to look up exactly whom. MVP was just getting beat up, mainly losing matches to Drew McIntyre. Oh, Drew McIntyre was the other one he tried to manage. So then, as the storyline with Bobby Lashley and Lana began to break apart, as it should have because that was a horrible storyline, MVP came in as a beacon of hope for Bobby Lashley, and in turn, he helped Lashley re-establish himself as a threat because when Lashley first came back, he was pushed to the moon, then subsequently left in the dust. Then once Leo Rush took over as his manager, he was pushed back to the moon, sort of, but also made a fool of. So MVP really is the MVP of 2020, but I'll go into details a bit later. So as months go by, MVP is managing Lashley. Suddenly, Shelton Benjamin is on a losing streak. Shelton Benjamin, so many accolades to his name, so many OMG moments, so many moments in wrestling history with Shelton. Just amazing. But his comeback to WWE has been very lackluster, mainly due to his style changing completely for him, one, being older, and two, him having that foundation from being in New Japan Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Nowhere. You can see that aggressive style with him now. So that more strike heavy, pound heavy style with Shelton. So MVP begins to manage Shelton a little bit. Shelton becomes the 24/7 champion for just a little bit. But so far, business starts to get going, not booming just yet. One of the big takeaways that helped the Hurt Business really establish themselves, not only uh, COVID and the lack of a crowd, but also Raw Underground and Retribution. These two storylines are the foundation for helping the Hurt Business business to start booming. Essentially, the Raw Underground, that little sub project of Shane McMahon's, was very well a good idea. Wasn't exactly fleshed out, but the episode when the Hurt Business took over, it was a sight to behold. You just see Lashley in his purest form of dominance, destroying people left and right. You see Shelton Benjamin destroying people left and right. MVP destroying people left and right. But I'm going to backtrack really quickly because all of these men have history together, and including Cedric, I'll get to a little bit later. But let's backtrack to the history between Shelton and MVP, as his name, Shelton Benjamin's name, actually in New Japan was Shelton X Benjamin. I'm not sure what the X exactly means in Japanese. I see that a lot with various anime and names and things like that. They were actually called Ghetto Strong Style, I think. Black Dynamite was the tag team name. Look up their work in Japan. It's very good, very good, very strong tag team. And fun fact for everybody, MVP was the first IWGP Intercontinental Champion, so he made history in Japan as well. So moving forward, one of the interesting things in how Cedric's entry into the Hurt Business, there's a small group of Mustafa Ali, Cedric Alexander, and Ricochet. Wait, yeah, I believe those are the three. So what happens is MVPs put in little bugs in those three guys' ear, but mainly Cedric, who coming into WWE from the Cruiserweight Classic, he seriously had like a good little backing. He became the Cruiserweight Champion a little bit after, probably a year later after that. But subsequently, he was just floating. Very talented wrestler. I'm talking about this man lost weight just to join the cruiserweight division, because if people followed his Ring of Honor career, he was much bigger guy, much thicker guy. Very similar to Buddy Murphy's story, but Buddy Murphy was post Cedric, so what do you know? Cedric Alexander, I had inklings that he was going to change. The one thing I wanted to think about, out of those three men, the only one that made sense joining the Hurt Business is Cedric, because of the fact the guy seems to be the only one with a solid aggressive nature as far as a wrestler in style and facial expressions. And this really helped give him a character dynamic, because just being the very good wrestler is something that's not going to sell you anything. So, as the months go by, it starts looking good to Cedric joining the Hurt Business. And you see, as he subsequently joins the Hurt Business, his career takes a different approach and takes a surge. And then you see Lashley becoming the United States champion. And then you see recently, as of, I want to say, what pay-per-view is that? The Cell, I believe. The Hurt Business becoming tag champions, or is that a Raw? I believe. I'm not too sure exactly. I would have to look that up. I'll probably include that on the slide and maybe type in the date underneath when they became the tag champions for Raw. Um, you see, the business is booming now, and just it's one of those things you didn't expect from 2020 at all. A group that was probably going to be a brush away, or just, a quick cash grab, subsequently becoming one of the better factions of 2020, and possibly one of the better factions of all time. And the only thing that's needed is either a MVP becoming the WWE champion, or Bobby Lashley playing dual champion. But one of the interesting things I want people to take away, as you saw Shelton in the Hurt Business, was really the one pushing for Cedric. Now, Cedric and Shelton actually have a long storied history, as they feuded with each other, I believe, in 2019, subsequently on Superstars. They feuded a lot on WWE Superstars. I know that still exists. Funny enough, I didn't even know that it still exists, but I heard inklings of, hey, Shelton and Cedric are killing it on Superstars, having really good matches. And if you look up some of those matches, yes, if you want to see Shelton somewhat in his prime in these matches, it's a very good series of matches they had. But as Shelton was the one who saw the potential in Cedric, he also is the one that might end up turning on Cedric, because as you saw, to win the tag title, Cedric tagged himself in the match, distracting Shelton, luckily getting the 3 count on Kofi Kingston to win the Raw Tag Championships. But you can see Cedric's character is getting very full of himself. He's starting to make mistakes. He's going to make some mistakes in the Hurt Business. Now, the territory I'm going into is the future of the Hurt Business. I feel as though WWE's best shot right now is to leave the Hurt Business as it is. Leave it intact. Let them have their little squabble. What they can do is have Shelton and Cedric fight each other one-on-one, no distractions, just so they can let their grievances out at each other, let their inner beef out on the mat, and then get back to business at hand. Now, one of the interesting things about Retribution, ever since that Hurt Business feud, hasn't been good at all. They're like possibly the worst faction in wrestling history, because they came in with a new premise, something a little different, but the names are horrible. The wrestlers behind the gimmicks are very good, but the names are horrible and they're not giving anything good. What I'm thinking as far as this section for future of Hurt Business, they need to add Ricochet to Retribution. Adding Ricochet to Retribution would be a very good thing because of the fact he's already friends with Mustafa Ali. He and Ali were already a tag team. Imagining Ricochet joining the Retribution would be a very interesting thing, and it gives the Hurt Business a team to feud with for a couple weeks or even months. They could fight different sections of the Hurt Business and Retribution. You could have what's his name, Slapjack fight MVP or Lashley, and one of them fight for Lashley's U.S. title, but then you focus on Ali and Ricochet as your tag team for the group, and they focus on Cedric and Shelton, and they could have a very good series of matches, in my opinion, with each other, and that would make sense to do it like that and keep the belts on, possibly keep them on the Hurt Business for as long as possible, and hypothetically speaking, if either Shelton or Cedric is injured, God forbid they aren't, you can still institute the Freebird rule and have the Hurt Business defend the titles within each other. So that would make even Lashley a double champion, which raises his stock to face for the WWE title at some point. And like I said, MVP deserves an award for being the true MVP of WWE right now, because he's literally this Hurt Business was probably one of the best ideas in WWE's history in a long time. Now people were suggesting maybe Keith Lee joining the Hurt Business. While that's not a bad idea, I honestly would keep the Hurt Business at its core, because those four men to me are the staples of the Hurt Business. Adding a fifth element would only make it a little awkward. And then, hypothetically speaking, something happens with Undisputed Era somehow ending up on Raw. You would have 4-on-4 if Bobby Fish isn't injured. You could have a 4-on-4 with the Hurt Business versus Undisputed Era. It would be very cool to see that. You could have just Keith Lee almost being an enemy to the Hurt Business because he doesn't want to join them and they don't want him to join. You could have even the Hurt Business decide, let's take over WWE and let's have MVP or Lashley attack Drew McIntyre. Now, Lashley fought Drew when it was just himself and MVP, but now you have MVP, Shelton, and Cedric behind Lashley's back, covering him. And that's a complete wall against Drew, whatever the storyline is with him and Sheamus with this weird frenemy thing. But in my opinion, once again, the Hurt Business is the best thing that happened within WWE in a long time. And business is booming, and it needs to stay booming until WWE figures out what they're going to do, because any moves to break them up would not be a good idea at all. There's no need to break them up. They seem to be the only reason to watch Raw. Honestly, that's the only reason I watch Raw. And honestly, they need to keep them going for a long time. So leave your comments, like, subscribe, and let me know whatever else you want me to cover. I cover Japanese wrestling. I'll cover classic wrestling, feuds, or maybe wrestler profiles, or why I like certain wrestlers. Like, one thing I want to do is, because I'm such a huge fan of his, is a Randy Orton video. And after the past match with Bray Wyatt, I really want to do a video on him, profiling him and his character breakdown. So like, subscribe, comment, and